It's Wednesday, October the 16th. Lake level's right about 916, and the water temperature's probably about 72, 73 degrees in the morning. Each day, I hadn't been the last couple days, but when I was out, Sunday was the last day I was out, and each day, like I say, it's dropping a couple degrees, so it's probably dropped a little bit more than that, maybe right at 70 degrees first thing in the morning. And with these nights getting down there in the 50s, it's going to continue to cool, which is going to do nothing but make the fishing a little bit better. Now, I've been catching, a lot of fish on wiggleworts, jigs have been the main two things I've been catching them on. Now, some areas of the lake haven't been as good for me. I found the best area to be probably 8 or 10 miles each way from the dam, whether you head towards Kimberling City or up towards Long Creek. I've been catching predominantly smallmouth, and it seems like if I'm in the area that have a more population of smallmouths in it, is where I'm doing a little better. Like I was up into James, I think it was Saturday. We caught fish up there, but not as many fish or as big as I had been catching down by the dam. And I was up at Shell Knob Sunday, and we fished up in the Big Creek, Campbell Point area, and we caught some largemouths on a wigglewort, some Kentuckies on a jig, and a couple smallmouths. But it still seems like, most of the fish I'm catching are predominantly smallmouth, so if I'm keying on smallmouth areas, I'm getting more bites. Now, in the last couple of reports, I was mainly talking about wiggleworts and the football jig, whether it be, half ounce or 5/8 ounce football jig, and a lot of the crawdad pattern wiggleworts. Now, wigglewort's not the only bait that they'll bite. They'll bite a lot of these, like this little Strike King Series 3 XD and a Series 5. What you want to do is just use crawdad patterns, and I've usually got one of these tied on because there'll be days that they'll want the Strike King a little bit better than they'll want the wigglewort. And what you got to do is just kind of mix it up. And even something else you might try is the little Strike King 1.5. If you find that a lot of these wigglewort fish, like the other day we was catching them, they was just right off the bank. You usually get your bite within the first 5 or 6 cranks, which the wigglework will work good up in that depth, but it tends to get hung up a little bit more. So we switched to a little 1.5 Strike King square bill, and that bait will run down about 4, maybe 5 foot. So we could fish it in that shallower water with less hang-ups, and it's got a little bit different, a little bit more erratic hunt to it than the wigglework. Now, another thing that I hadn't talked hardly anything about, where we're catching these fish on a football jig. Anywhere from 5 foot to as deep as 20 to 22 feet. I've mainly been talking about catching them on a football jig, and they will bite a Carolina rig too. That's something we probably don't fish as much as we used to, but they will bite it. And there's a couple different ways I usually rig the Carolina rig up. If I'm throwing it on a bait caster, I'll usually throw it no less than 12 pound, and I'll throw up to 15 or 17. This particular one here, I've got 15 pound line, 7.2 rod, same thing I'll throw a football jig with, pretty stiff rod. And I've got a Lew's 6.4 to 1 Tournament Speed Spool Pro. I want something with a pretty fast retrieve so I can make, a lot of line up if I have to. A couple different ways you can rig up a Carolina rig. You can either use a swivel, or what I've got here is a Carolina keeper. I put my weight on, and you take one of these Carolina keepers, and what they've got is they've got a little slit in them where you squeeze it with a pair of pliers, and it'll open up and you can put the line in. What's good about these, if you get a fray in your line, all you got to do is take your needle nose, squeeze it opposite the slit, see, and it'll slide up. You can slide them both up. And I use 2, depends on the line size, I'll get into that in just a minute, but you can slide them up, cut your line, and retie your hook. It's a lot easier than having to tie 2 extra knots for the swivel. And the reason I used 2 beads with that 3/4 ounce weight, sometimes these Carolina keepers will get a little wore out, And when you get stuck in the rocks, when you go to pop it out, it'll slide down the line. So by putting 2 in there, it helps keep it tight. And as far as the hook, you know, right now a good bait, there's a couple different baits I'll use. I'll use a 4-inch centipede, and I'm using a lot of the same colors that I'm using on the jig. You know, either watermelon candy, green pumpkin red, watermelon red. Something else that I will use is a Magnum finesse worm. Now, depending on this Magnum finesse worm, I'll usually use a 3/0 hook. And basically what I'm just going to do, it's the 3/0 offset worm hook. Just taking Texas rig it, you know, slide it up to the J-bend in the hook. And one thing I like to do, I don't like to keep the hook totally exposed. If I'm fishing around rock, I actually pull the hook back out the back side of the worm, so that when I get a bite, I don't have to penetrate the plastic with the point of the hook. I think this, you know, helps up on my hookup ratios. Now, if I was fishing in real thick cover around brush piles, I would just slide that worm back a little bit and keep the hook point covered so I wouldn't get stuck. But most of the time I'm fishing around rock. Now, if I'm using another good bait to use too is a baby brush hog in a watermelon candy, watermelon red, green pumpkin red. And this time of year I'll usually use a baby brush hog. And if I'm using like a little 4-inch centipede, I'll downsize the hook to a 2/0. You know, same colors, you know, watermelon candy, watermelon red. Now, if I'm rigging the Carolina rig up on a spinning rod, what I'll do, I've been using a lot more braid here lately than what I used to. And probably one of the reasons for that is I got to throw in this Berkeley Nano Fill, and I've just had real good luck with it. You know, if you're trying to fish 10 or 12 pound line on a spinning rod, if you've done it, you'll know what I mean by you get a lot of memory and coil, and you got to mess with loops coming off the reel. With this Nano Fill, I've got 0 stretch like a braid, and it doesn't have any memory, so I don't have any of that. But this is the way I've got this one rigged up, is more like a conventional Carolina rig. I've got, you know, my main line, 3/8 ounce weight, a bead, which I believe helps protect the knot on the swivel, and then I've got a leader. In this case, I've got 8-pound fluorocarbon leader and 12-pound main line. Now, you can do this same rig on the bait caster instead of using the Carolina keeper. The only thing I don't like about using the swivel versus the Carolina keeper, if I break this off, I got 2 extra knots to tie. With the Carolina keeper, I just got 1 knot to tie. But the Carolina keeper doesn't work as well on the braid or the Nano Fill as a swivel. So, but if I was using mono or fluorocarbon on the spinning rod, I would probably use a Carolina keeper versus the swivel. And if I'm throwing it on a spinning rod, I've got this one matched with I've got it on a 7.2 medium heavy Team Lose rod. You want something, you know, fairly long rod where you can make long cast, and something with some good backbone. And I've got the new Lose Speed Spin that I've been talking a little bit about. They've got these available now. Sportsman Factory Outlet's got them. John, I believe, has got them at Fin and Feather there in Springfield. And most of the Cabela stores should be having them pretty quick. But they're an awesome new spinning reel. This one here retails at $79. And they've got another one at a little bit better, a little bit smoother, and it's $129, the Gold Team Lose. But it's got real smooth drag, real lightweight. A lot of the main difference with the Team Lose reel, it's got a lot of carbon-like material in it, so the whole rig is a little bit lighter. But a lot of these fish are still in the same areas I've been catching them. They're on main lake and in the creeks on secondary points. The crankbait fish, I wish I could tell you there was a particular type of rock or bank that you need to crank. The best thing I've found is just actually putting the trolling motor down and starting at points and fishing whatever looks good. Seems like every time I try to overthink it, you know, if I get a bite on a particular type bank where the rock changes, if I go jumping around trying to repeat that at different areas, I found here in the last week or so I'm better off just keeping the trolling motor down. The fish really seem to be scattered. Good thing about it is when you find one, there's usually several in the same area. And the boat docks, that's going to do nothing but continue to get better as well. You know, small finesse jig, 1/4 ounce, 5/16, 3/8, from 10 or 12 foot in to underneath the walkways. If it's a bigger dock that you're fishing, as you're going around the dock to go to the next one, once it gets deeper than 20 foot or so, take that 1/2 ounce or 5/8 football jig and flip it in them stalls, work it down the bottom, pump it a couple times. So, till next week, good luck, good fishing.